Welcome. This is, as I said in a post a little bit earlier, this is the first time I've ever done this, and in classic style. I didn't read the instructions particularly closely, so I can't guarantee that this is going to work, but I hope that it does, and I hope that you're able to watch this on Patreon. If you can, I think comments are enabled, so let me know. It'll be nice to know that I'm actually speaking to people and not to myself. So, Olympic gymnastics started at the weekend, obviously. We did a podcast last week, which I hope you listened to and enjoyed. And it threw up what I think will be one of the big legacy stories of these Olympic Games, which is the Simone Biles withdrawal from the team event. Since then, there have been the typical thermonuclear takes on each side. I followed on social media, and you get the likes of Piers Morgan saying that it's just a sign of weakness and selfishness, that Simone Biles would have withdrawn from that event. And then the other side, and this is by far the largest side, is a group of people who are saying that she showed tremendous courage and self-awareness, and they are commending her for withdrawing for the reasons that she did. I have also seen on that same extreme people saying that this will change sport forever, which is the, again, extreme polarized take on it. I don't think that that's true. And it struck me listening to people talk, reading what people are saying, and then this morning preparing for an interview I gave here in South Africa on a news station, that there's quite a lot that exists between those two extremes, and that's really what I wanted to speak to you about today. So I jotted down notes and identified what I think are 5 concepts that I wanted to just bring up. I don't have the answers. This certainly is not intended to be the last word in a conversation, but rather the first. I think it's a helpful conversation because anytime we put mental health in the spotlight and we start talking about it, I think it helps because it breaks down barriers to future discussion. And that is useful. So I think we should embrace the conversation. Where I think we need to be careful is the polarization, because I think it threatens the value. There's a trade-off, for instance, between talking about it, breaking down the stigma, and I have to be careful about the wording. I don't know if I'm using the right words here, but almost diluting and trivializing the reality of some of the mental health considerations and issues. I say this as someone who has lived through and experienced serious depression and anxiety in loved ones, people that are very close to me, family members, and I'm sure many of you can relate, perhaps even personally. And you understand the seriousness of these conditions. And I do have some concerns that as it becomes more popularized, it will become a catch-all that is used by people. And I think that discussion has been had. I'm not suggesting for a second that that's the situation for Biles or Osaka or any other athlete who says it. But I think we do have to just be a little bit careful. That's the one caveat to, I think, these conversations. There's also a perception among people that athletes should just accept and deal with pressure because it's part of the package. And I actually understand that, and to some extent, large extent, I agree with it. When an athlete is celebrated for winning Olympic medals, world titles, breaking world records, making potentially millions of dollars off sport, they are taking the good from it. And that inevitably comes with some bad. There's going to be pressure. There's going to be criticism. And one of the things actually that is filtered out as athletes move through a pathway from junior into adult, into sub-elite, into elite, is the ability to deal with that pressure. It's something coaches work on athletes about, and we invest significant time. And a characteristic then of elite athletes is emotional resilience, psychological strength, and big match temperament, for lack of a better word. So I think it's understandable then that people look at Biles and say, well, you shouldn't be able to do this. I don't think it's true, but I understand where that perception is coming from. I think an important point is that the distinction between expecting our athletes to deal with pressure in sporting contexts and life pressure changes is when you look at someone like Biles, who has been at the center of the sex abuse scandal in US gymnastics. There's enormous pressure there. The COVID situation has changed athletes' preparation and circumstances in the village. Plus, she has been given this enviable responsibility of being the face of the games, the highest profile athlete, and a lot of expectation. So what she experiences is quite different to what the athlete who wins the women's individual all-around tonight will experience. There are overlapping components of that pressure, but there are some different ones. And I think just keep that in mind. The sort of closer you get to the sun, the more likely you are to get sunburned, in a sense. And I think that's the emotional equivalent that's happening here. Anyway, with that as a preamble, let me quickly outline these 5 concepts that I thought are useful to understand. The first thing is, it surprises me that this has become such a big story. And the reason I say that is that you can't have it both ways when it comes to mental and emotional strength. So when Naomi Osaka wins the Australian Open, when Novak Djokovic wins all the Opens, when Simone Biles wins her previous Olympic gold medals, or I'm watching swimming in the background, and when these athletes produce Olympic records to win golds, we will celebrate quite justifiably that they have physiologically, psychologically, and emotionally brought themselves to a peak at exactly the right moment. So we create this axis of 3 factors: emotional, psychological, and physiological. And we recognize that sport actually rewards all 3 of those factors. Now, because of that, we clearly understand that mental and emotional factors matter. So why then do we not appreciate that when the athlete underperforms, when they can't execute a skill, when they can't hit a personal best under pressure, when they can't execute in, watching the rugby sevens the other day, and unfortunately South Africa failed to perform on the stage when it was necessary, we have to be able to attribute the failure to the same things that create the success. I can't see how you can have it both ways. So that's the first point. Is it's surprising to me that it's as big a deal as it is. And then related to that, the hypothetical that struck me in the aftermath of the team competition is, what if it was an ankle injury? Imagine Simone Biles runs down the runway, executes that vault, pulls it off, or maybe doesn't because the ankle injury happened on the run-up, and then withdraws because of a ligament issue. We would probably then have a headline the next morning saying, US star gymnast injured, US loses silver, loses gold. Russia, the ROC, wins that competition. End of story. So we have this understanding that the physical side, remember I spoke about that axis, the physical side can break down, and it's understandable and acceptable. We might say it's in a critical moment that she failed to get her body to the right position in the right time, in the right condition for that moment. But everyone understands that injuries happen and performance suffers as a consequence. So the only reason it's a bigger story is because there's a stigma around mental health that we haven't quite yet overcome. And that's if I'm trying to be positive, that's the element about this that I think is useful, is that now we can start understanding that there are these 3 points on a triangle, this axis. And we should be able to talk about a mental issue in exactly the same way as we do physical. So that's the second point. We shouldn't really be treating them differently, though I understand why we do. Concept number 3 is, the biggest surprise really is that she said it. Imagine how many times, you're all sports fans and lovers, imagine how many times in the last 4 years, 5 years since Rio 2016, you have watched athletes participate in sport and they have underperformed because of a psychological issue. Dozens, hundreds of times. I mean, off the top of my head, like the most high-profile ones, Greg Norman in the Masters that 1 year, Jana Novotná when she lost to Steffi Graf, I think it was, at Wimbledon. Another golf example, Ian Baker Finch was a golfer who lost the ability to putt. He got what are called the yips, which is in effect the same thing Simone Biles has said she's suffering from in gymnastics, what's called the twisties, where you lose your sense of position in space and time. Obviously, when you can't putt, you're not risking injury and paralysis, whereas Biles is. We'll come to that in a moment. But the point I'm trying to make is that it happens quite a lot. It's just that you don't see it. And so once again, the point, I think it's all the same common theme, is that these things, these performances that we see and expect of elite athletes are undermined by physiological failures, emotional problems, and psychology, which are all linked to one another. Because if I'm not physiologically prepared, then my confidence is weak and I might start to feel anxious, and then the emotion starts to affect it. So we really shouldn't be separating them out, but for some reason we neglect the mental side, which I find quite strange. So there are without doubt and in the next week or so, you'll watch track and field. There are going to be athletes who underperform, and we won't think twice. But that athlete will then walk down the tunnel and disappear to the Olympic Village, knowing that that underperformance was a result of the same things Biles is suffering from. Now, the interesting thing about that is that when she withdrew, was she doing something courageous, or was it weakness, as some have alleged? If it was an individual sport, I suspect that she might have not withdrawn. But because of the format of the team competition allows her to do it, there's a fourth gymnast who can come in and take her place. Not ideally, obviously, but someone else can do it. So in her mind, she's weighing it up and she's saying, I'm not going to score anything like I should. In fact, I'm going to be the weakest. She was on the vault. And so therefore, staying in this is actually not helpful anyway. I can't overcome this problem right now. And so therefore, it is the best thing for the team for me to actually step back. It's also the best thing for myself because, as we discovered talking to Helen in our previous podcast, failure to execute these skills is potentially catastrophic, very serious or mild injuries. And so on both fronts, whether it was for her own reasons or for the team, you can actually understand why she would have said it. And again, why there's all this fuss about it, I don't know. Concept number 5, and this is really the last one. There was a really good thread that Steve Magness posted on Twitter. I'd encourage you to go look at it, where he spoke about weakness and how people calling Simone Biles weak don't understand the sport and don't understand athletes or sport in general. And to a large extent, I agree with him. But then I saw something that Des Linden posted where she spoke about how we should actually just be able to accept that Simone Biles had this moment of weakness. And it struck me that the definition of weakness is one of the core things that we are maybe misunderstanding here. In my mind, there's no doubt that Simone Biles underperforming at vault can be called a moment of weakness. But that's not a character judgment on her. That doesn't make her a weak person. It's not a moral failure or a character failure for her to, in that moment, underperform a sporting skill. That's what seems outrageous to me. And I want to give you the example. Imagine, let's take two sports. One is a runner, track and field athlete. We'll see that next week. And the other is a weightlifter, because then we can literally talk about weakness. Let's start with a weightlifter. They go down, they bend down, and they're picking up the bar. It's the clean and jerk. It's 135 kilograms, Olympic record. And they get it up into the hold position. And at the moment of making that final exertion, they aren't strong enough for the weight, and they drop it. The world will watch that and say, well, the athlete just wasn't strong enough. Therefore, by definition, that was a moment of weakness. No problem. It's fine. That happens. That's what sport is about. In the same way, when a runner slows down in the final kilometer of a marathon to lose gold and win silver, we recognize that the fatigue in that moment is a moment of physiological weakness. The athlete hasn't given up. It's just that they can't do it anymore. In the same way that the weightlifter doesn't consciously cave and quit and choke. It's just that their body didn't allow them to go to where their mind wanted to win that gold medal. So those things don't make a person weak, but they are weakness. And so I think these two concepts can actually coexist. And so another way to think of it is that, to come back to the first point I made, is the concept 1, is that if strength is the existence of mental, emotional, and physiological capability, then if performance is deteriorated, then of course one of those things must be absent or minimized, which I think can be called weakness. So I guess the point that I'm trying to make here is that the whole situation feels blown out of proportion to me. I don't think this is a turning point for sport around the world. I don't think that Simone Biles making this choice for her mental health is going to revolutionize athletes and empower them. I think it's a characteristic that she showed. I don't think it's unique to her. There will be others who make the same decisions, but there will be others who don't, and it's no big deal. I just feel that the whole thing has been amplified. There's along with the stigma of mental health and discussion around it, there's also this idea that it's a shield that you can't talk about in a protective way. And I don't think either of those things is helpful. And I think when Simone Biles is very candid and she says, I freaked out and I couldn't cope and I was shaking before, for me, that's the same as an athlete who says, I felt tired and lightheaded and my muscles were weak and I just felt like I couldn't do the normal things with my body. They are the same things. And I hope that the fact that this conversation is happening changes that in the future. So yeah, that's my bit. I've been nattering on here for 15 minutes. Once again, this is exclusive to patrons. So thank you once again for your support, all you Olympic athletes, champions, legends. This video will sit on the site forever, potentially. Nothing's forever, but it'll go up there for a long time. So if you haven't watched it live, don't fret. It'll be there for you. And the plan is to do more of these. I've been talking too long now, so I want to wrap this up. But the ability for me to respond quickly to news is sometimes difficult in the classical podcast format. It takes time and Mike is busy. So I think this is a cool way to do it. It's not always going to be 15 minutes. As I get better at it, I'll get shorter and crisper at it. But yeah, let me know if you enjoy these and I'll keep delivering them as the Olympics progresses and beyond. So thanks for watching. Enjoy the rest of the gymnastics. Enjoy the last of the swimming and bring on the track and field. I'll speak to you all soon. Ciao.